Well, good evening, Cedar Falls, and welcome to the standing committee meetings of Monday, October 2nd, 2023. I will now call this meeting to order with a roll call from Madam Clerk.
Schultz.
Here.
DeBoer. Here. Cruz.
Here.
Harding.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Sires.
Here.
Dunn. Here. All members present.
All right, thank you. We'll start with Community Development Committee, and our first presentation is by Jamie Castle, and we're going to be talking about native plants in city right-of-way. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you. All right. Okay. So today's presentation is on native plantings in the right-of-way. This was brought forth through a referral on April 3rd of 2023 to discuss the policy regarding prairie plantings or native plantings in the city right-of-way. The history of native plantings in the right-of-way is very brief. In my research prior to 2015, there was no mention of prairie plantings in the ordinance. And in 2017, the current ordinance was adopted. In 2019, we did have a recodification, but there was no change to the text of the ordinance. There is no other mention of prairie grass or native plantings in the ordinance. So what that section says is that any new native plantings in the right-of-way after the 2017 ordinance must comply with this requirement. The main item on here that would be different from just regular plantings is that there should be a minimum of 18 inches from any adjacent street, curb, public sidewalk, alleyway, or other similar thoroughfare. And it should be defined with turf grass that must meet the current codes. So that means that it must meet the 8-inch maximum height. Any existing native plantings in the right-of-way were allowed to stay. I realize that there are some concerns regarding these existing plantings, and as concerns or complaints are submitted, staff researches the time frame in which the plantings have been placed. If prior to 2017, we ensure the plantings meet Ordinance Section 1947C, which is site areas for plantings other than trees. We follow this section because it has been in place longer than the 2017 ordinance. So what that section says is that there needs to be a clear site area around the corners, and that any plantings in that area other than trees has a maximum height limit of 24 inches. So if we look at a property that does not have this clear site area, we do ask that that area is brought to compliance with this ordinance section. In the 4 years that I have been the code enforcement supervisor, we have seen a handful of concerns regarding prairie plantings in the right-of-way. And the way that we have resolved them are, for instance, the first is they create difficulties for pedestrians crossing the street. We go back to that section I just mentioned and require and confirm that the site areas are clear. Another concern that we've received is lack of maintenance. If we investigate and it's evident that the maintenance is lacking, we do meet with the owner. We request that they provide us with a maintenance plan, and we also request that the native plantings are cut down at a minimum of once a year per best practices. And then finally, which is probably our biggest complaint that we receive, is that they're not actually native plantings. We do have sometimes where it's overgrown. We're told that it's native plantings. We confirm between us or our arborist that if it's native plantings or not, and if it's not, we do ask that they mow down to the required heights, and then if they want to move forward with native plantings, they meet the current codes and they have the planting or the seed list approved by our arborist. What we'd like to recommend is that we continue under the current ordinance, which does have some requirements as to height of growth and where it can be in regards to the corners, and then the cutback of the 18 inches. It's a brief presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the native plantings.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilmember Ganfield.
Mrs. Castle, I just wanted to double check on the grandfathering operations. Is that codified with that ordinance change, or is that just by practice?
It's by practice.
Okay. If somebody had plantings all the way out to the curb, what would we need to do to get them to have that 18-inch buffer?
So at this point, we have not had any We've not gone back to make them change those unless it is that vision triangle. I believe, and Stephanie can help me with this one, but I believe that we would have to require that to be placed into the ordinance, bringing existing ones into compliance.
Yeah, I guess I'd like some clarification on that too, because if the law of the land is the law of the land without a grandfathering clause, it's the law of the land. We shouldn't need to add anything in to bring them compliant. So I think we're probably deviating a little bit by allowing it. Is that a correct assessment?
Typically, the enforcement of an ordinance is going forward. It does not reach back unless it's specifically stated in the ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah, if we did specifically state it, I would recommend at least there be a amortization period, it's called, so
Okay.
bring it into compliance in a couple of years or whatever the council would prefer.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilmember.
So how do you do an investigation to determine how old the plantings are, whether they're prior to 2017 or not?
We typically use the GIS system that we have. We can go back year by year, and it's pretty evident whether it is regular turf grass or if it is a prairie planting based on those images.
Sometimes we use Google Street View. There's a lot more information now where photographs have been taken, so we can use that too. We'll talk with the property owner. They may not be aware of that trigger date, so we just try to enter into an honest conversation with them.
Okay, and has enforcement been difficult through the court systems?
We've not had to utilize the court system. We have gained compliance from, I would like to say, every single one that we've had to approach thus far regarding either the clear site triangle or trimming back because it came in after the fact.
And that was only done by complaint basis?
Correct.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Castle, if you could give me some clarity. The right-of-way, which is what we're all talking about here, they have to have 18 inches mowed from the curb and the sidewalk. It's not just on a site triangle cornering area.
Correct. For anything that's been installed after 2017, they have to have the 18 inches between the curb and then also at the sidewalk. Where I'm talking about the site corner, that's specifically for those that were older than the 2017, when we've had complaints about having issues seeing around those corners.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I look at this, we call plants native plantings, pollinators, what have you. But there's still an eyesore to the neighborhoods nearby. I get a number of complaints on this. And another clarity here, you're saying on the site triangle, 24 inches is the height.
Correct.
So somebody sitting in a car, curbs up, 2 feet up, you feel that's sufficient to view?
So we utilize the, from the engineering, they've got those site triangles. It's not specific just to prairie plantings. It's across the board that any
shrubs
plantings,
or- okay.
shrubs, trees, well, trees not, but shrubs, anything that can be 24 inches.
Okay. I guess I look at the saying that, you look at a corn and bean farmer, a corn in a bean field is a weed. The right-of-way is city property, and it's part of the aesthetics and the public realm that we have. I feel that it's not too much to ask that these not be allowed or be phased out, as Mr. Rogers said, with a couple years, because they harbor rodents. I see minimal good in these, and there's very few of them in the city, but the ones that are there are very obnoxious to the neighborhood, extremely obnoxious. So I'd be in favor of reaching back, or whatever the legal term is, to phase these out over the next 2 years, if that's permissible by Mr. Rogers, or what other time frame would be appropriate.
Off the cuff, a couple years ought to be enough, 2 or 3, but, so there'd be a process, though, as council adopts it. It's going to do 3 readings, so that's additional notice to the folks, and then a couple, 3 years after that to assure compliance on the basis of basically nuisance, aesthetic nuisance.
Correct, right. Because I see situations where if the ones that I've noticed are saying they're before 2017, that they don't have to have the 18 inches around the right-of-way between the sidewalk and the street.
Correct.
It's falling into the street. It's the reason we have the 18 inches. So why should that exist and continue forward?
And we have had a handful that we've had to ask them to trim back for that complaint when we receive them. So we do enforce that they can't hang over the sidewalk, they can't hang over the street when we receive a complaint on them.
Well, I guess people maybe give up complaining because they don't see any progress in removing these, but that's why I brought this forward. I'm reading it's supposed to have turf grass, regular lawn grass of some sort, mowed below the 18-inch max, like is typical of a lawn requirements, 18 inches from the sidewalk and the curb. I'd like to go a step further and just eliminate these over the course of 2 years, so that by the end of the summer of 2025, these are no longer allowed in the city code.
Can I,
Can I ask a question?
I'm going to say something first, and then you can, yeah. I guess I haven't received any complaints thus far on this issue in my area. Before we would go as far as to say I want to remove them, I would love to have forwarded to me all the complaints and all the people that have complained of this, and then I would love to look at the data from the city, the complaints we have logged with the city, also see where they're all at. The only one I can think of is on Rainbow, and it's nice. It's upkept, and it's really pretty. So again, I'm not saying like I'm totally against it, but you know, one man's eyesore is another man's beauty, and so it just comes off as jumping the gun to me. So before we do anything rash and jump to ordinances, I'd love to collect and look at everything. How many people are complaining? How many people are for it? And get more information. That's all. So, Councilmember DeBur?
Yeah, I was curious on the drive up here, so I made a point of looking on College Street and 4th Street and was surprised to see around trees some real tall weeds, or native. I don't know if they were native. They looked like weeds to me, but I was curious on this when you talk about repealing it back. How do you do that so that you could still allow trees? Or there are some properties, I noted one that had a real high curved or slanted hill on the side of the lot where they really couldn't get anything to grow. And that's where I think this type of ordinance was actually intended for.
So the ones on the side of the lot, that would be private property,
That'd be
which we
private.
would not be, this would not pertain to that. And we have not,
Except for the 18-inch.
except for the 18 inches. And when there's complaint that it is not native grass, it's just overgrowth, we do not do anything with those. As for the areas in the right-of-way, it would have to be a discussion of exactly how to word it so we can maintain trees and shrubs if desired.
I think it's also important to note that the ordinance allows for other types of plantings that are low growing and doesn't specifically say it has to be turf grass. So it can be native plantings, it can be daylilies that are, lower growth. It could be hostas, it could be some type of sedum that spreads, it could be any variety of things. So if you're going to change it, you're going to need to specify that and think about the city bioswales that have native plantings in them too that we've received grants for.
Mr. Chair.
I'll let Councilmember Dunn, since she hasn't spoken, then we'll come back. Yes.
I didn't say this a lot. I echo what Councilman Harding said. I'd like to see, I understand the concern. I can think of one area that I've received a complaint when I first got elected 3 years ago or however long ago that was. But I would love to know the data and the actual, to know how much this is a concern or problem because you're right. Some people find this beautiful, and to be honest, after this year of drought, some of these plantings are much easier to maintain when you're getting almost zero rain. So I I think we need to be fair and know that some citizens, while some folks may have a complaint, many, maybe not many, but maybe the same amount of folks enjoy or appreciate the current ordinance. So I'd like to know where we're at before we dive into changing something.
We can provide that information. I just want to comment, there aren't really that many that we've gotten complaints on, to be honest. It's, the more complaints we get are ones that are claiming that they are native prairies, and they truly are not.
So if possible for information, I would love to know, like, how many do we have in the city? How many are turf grass? How many are hostas? The one I'm thinking of is actually like flowers. It's not actually tall grass.
Outside.
And yeah, and it's beautiful. And so I would love to know, if possible, you know, what are all the different types? Because a drastic ordinance change like that would not only take out the potential hazards, you know, or I say hazards, but the ones that really need taken out, and possibly do a lot of damage to the ones that are helping our city. So those would be my requested informational pieces. And now I'll move on to Councilmember DeBur and then Councilmember Cruz.
Well, if it wasn't an ordinance change, if we were instead to do an enforcement change, you know, we have the city divided up into sections where we do the sidewalk assessments. Do they ever look and see areas that are really in need of maintenance and report those, or is it only if a neighbor complains?
Yep, so right now with code enforcement, we're working on proactive enforcement in addition to complaint or reactive. And they're looking at any ordinance violations regarding nuisance to the property, over trees that are overhanging sidewalks. So this is one area that they would be looking at. But again, we're going back to see if it falls within before or after that 2017, and then if it truly is a prairie or not.
And then it could take up to 10 years before your area gets reviewed.
We're faster than that 10-year. We're trying to get two, maybe, well, probably one or two, depending on the size of the area. Obviously, the more dense areas are taking longer. But right now, I do know that Adam is on his second one for this year.
Council, oh, sorry.
I just said thank you.
That's a good idea, actually, the enforcement aspect. Councilmember Cruz.
So I guess I look at this, you've got your entirety of your yard, front, back, sides, that you can plant native prairie, whatever, native plantings, pollinators, what have you, flowers, bushes, shrubs. You have from the sidewalk to the street, which can be up to, what, 10 feet maybe, or whatever, down to maybe 3 feet. And by the time you put a recognizable 18-inch area of maintenance, it would narrow it down to be even smaller. How much true benefit is it to anyone to have that little strip there? I look at that. I look at the rodents that are in there, like I said earlier, and then snow. They historically have been like a snow fence, catching snow, drifting into the street. And I have pictures of that I could spread. Simon, I did send you pictures of the one I'm referring to here. But I don't want to lose the opportunity if we postpone it, or how we want to approach this, to keep this an open item for discussion after we highlight what's out there. And it could be just 3 or 4, but those 3 or 4 irritate 6 or 8 or 10 people around them. And then if the snow drifts in, who knows who's driving by, and it could be irritating. Now, in the Rainbow Drive situation, that might be far enough back that it's in the actual homeowner's property, because I don't think there's a sidewalk there. Maybe there is. I can't remember. But it's just a matter of moving it just a little bit further if it catches somebody like that.
So I'm definitely open to keeping the conversation going. Another piece of history that I thought of that would be helpful for the decision would be the history behind you said it was 2015 before? 2017. The history before the ordinance and why the ordinance history, the history of it would be helpful. And I think we could probably make a motion to have another committee meeting with a full presentation of why we have this and and then kind of go from there. I'd be open to that if someone wants to make a motion about that. Councilmember DeBerg?
In that motion, can we also have as to why they decided on 24-inch?
Yeah.
Because it seems like you got 18-inch width, but then we got 24-inch height. Maybe it would have been clearer to go 18 and 18.
We can.
To that point, if I may.
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
Prairie plantings, pollinators, weeds growing 24 inches tall, falling down into an 18-inch strip, you're going to violate the sidewalk and the curb. Kind of simple there, but that's just my analytical side.
Are there other questions before we possibly make a motion? Anything else that if we enter into a motion, we would want to see so that staff has an idea of what to present? Going once?
Yes.
Yes, Councilmember Ganfield.
Ms. Castle, would you be able to back up to the slide with the corner sight lines very quickly here? So we're asking for 18 inches mowed inside the sidewalk, essentially to the property owner's property line, but then a 30-foot triangle on either side.
On a corner.
So it's two different things. The clear site area is just that 24-inch height. It's, when we're looking at existing, we're trying to make sure that this is met. That 18 inches is the entire property, or the entire right-of-way, 18 inches on either side.
Of any sidewalk, street, or
Any
anything.
sidewalk or
So they have
street,
to have
correct.
18 inches of turf grass, or they have
Correct.
to have 18 inches of mulch?
It does say turf grass in the ordinance.
Yeah, I guess I'm of the same understanding that you've got two different perspectives, and expecting anybody to see like any one of us is not correct. So I like seeing some of these that aren't a safety hazard. I'm curious how many we have that are violating. So I'd like to see evidence of a clear problem that we need to address. One area that I would think we would receive or ask for recommendations on is to shore up any inaccuracies with what's out there safely today. If we don't allow for mulch, but somebody has put beautiful plantings in there that maintain that height requirement, then we should change it to allow for ground cover rather than turf grass. That's all I gotta say.
All right. So we're here. Is there a motion to further the conversation, or however we would say
Chair?
it? Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
Dustin, you have a quick one?
Well, I was just gonna see if we could simplify the motion over response.
Sure.
If we could receive back email with all that documentation, and then from there, a council person could bring back a recommendation for a later meeting. I don't know that we need another meeting unless there's something found.
Okay.
So I would make a motion at least to have them respond with their findings via email to all council.
And then from there, if there needs to be a referral, we could go from there. Is that fair?
I suppose, whatever,
Yeah, I'd be more agreeable to that.
I'm okay.
And
Councilmember
I
DeBerg?
believe back in 2017, the reason we did this was because of complaints.
Yeah, okay.
Just, you asked for history.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and I agree with you. The enforcement of any law is the critical portion, so we want to take a look at that. So hopefully that'll be insight for what we're looking for.
Yes, Councilmember Cruz? Sure.
I guess I'd like to find out the rationale of why we would allow an entire property owner's lot, except for 18 inches, but then also allow the city right-of-way, it's city property. And we talk about aesthetics when we talk about these code changes, the public realm, things like that. And here we are with things that the average person, the prudent person, whatever the terminology is in legal jargon, they would look at that and say they're weeds. And corn growing in a bean field is a weed. So to me, native plantings growing in the right-of-way, which is city property, is a weed. It might flower, might look pretty for a little bit, and typically native plantings flower very short time frames. They're not long-lasting, some of them might be, but anyway, so.
All right, so we'll get back all the information. It looks like the staff was diligently writing. Their pens are on fire, or their paper's on fire. So we're going to go ahead and proceed into the next part of the Community Development Committee.
Excuse
which
me.
is Yes.
So was there a clear directive by consensus or
so-
vote to ask staff, or?
It seemed to me like there was no motion presented, and Dustin said that we would be receiving an email, and everybody seemed amenable to that. So speak up now and make a motion if not amenable.
Mr. Rogers, are you saying you would rather have a motion?
Unless it's by consensus. So if somebody's not comfortable with this ask, they would speak up, and then there wouldn't be consensus anymore. There'd have to be a vote.
Okay.
Yeah, just for clarification,
Yes.
I think my recollection was I did make a formal motion, but it did not receive a second. I will withdraw that motion and agree that we have consensus to get feedback from staff. If anybody disagrees with
Okay.
that, speak now.
I think we have.
No.
Okay.
All right, my apologies. I didn't not realize it was meant to be a specific motion. All right, we have consensus, and we are now moving on to the second part, which is the College Hill Vision Plan. And we will be having a presentation momentarily from Ms. Karen Howard. Welcome.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
So you had asked for just an overview of the College Hill Vision Plan because it's been a couple years since it was adopted. It was adopted in 2021, May 3rd. The presentation tonight, given the short period of time, this is the presentation that the Farrell Madden gave on April 5th of 2021 when they were presenting it. So that presentation, of course, much longer. I think it took about an hour, so I am not going to do that. So I'm going to go fairly quickly through these slides, but they are the Farrell Madden slides. And if there's any questions at the end about anything, I'm happy to discuss further. Oh, maybe that doesn't work. We use the toggle here. So the project started off like it did with the downtown with project priorities established by the city council. There was a meeting with city council, and we talked about the boundaries of the area, and we talked about what the priorities were for city council, and so we all agreed on those in order to go forward. So we hired Farrell Madden. They went forward with the College Hill Vision Plan with the boundaries that were established by the city council. And the presentation given really went through what was in the plan. So it gave, these are all the elements of the vision plan, executive summary, and then all the process that went into that. And then, of course, talking about the outreach to the community and what happened during the charrette week, and then how the vision was established. So in the executive summary, there's really all the bullet points on what the final outcomes of the plan were. That was to build on the work of the College Hill Partnership. They were really involved in the planning of this and really were helpful to the city on gathering public input and encouraging people to come and participate in the planning effort. Another important thing was to define the public realm with active building facades, improving the sidewalk areas. Additional street trees was important. Ensuring that future street and sidewalk and rebuilding enhances the walkability of the area, because walkability was really important in the College Hill neighborhood. And then to support a multimodal environment. A lot of bicyclists participated in the plan, a lot of people that walk and bike in this area, and it was important to them to have that in the plan. And then a big piece of that was to understand the market. There's not been a lot of change in the College Hill neighborhood over the last 10 years or so. And so if we want change to occur, we need to examine that market to find out why that is. So there was an economist involved in the planning effort and helped us to understand that market. And then to create gateways. Where is the College Hill neighborhood? How do we invite people in, the wayfinding? And then new improved public spaces. How do we enhance the public spaces in the College Hill neighborhood? Where are those public spaces? What can we do to do that? And then adjust the rules for development. That means zoning and parking rules. That was a big part of the discussion. And then recognize that College Hill is distinct. It's a distinct neighborhood. It has distinct needs, and so needs a targeted approach. And then create a better process potentially for development review in the College Hill neighborhood, and establish a true bicycle network. Some of the bicyclists had some good suggestions. And then coordinate the parking supply, particularly with UNI. So as far as the visioning process went, in early, or in the winter of 2020, the consultants came to town. They walked the College Hill neighborhood. They looked at the original plans for the College Hill neighborhood plan, looked at what was there, and we had a kickoff meeting with people in the community to say, okay, what is it now? What does it look like now? What are some of the challenges right now? And of course, after that happened, we had the pandemic hit in full stride. So the consultants did their background research on market conditions, transportation review, the zoning review, the things that they could do, while we had to sort of regroup as a whole community on how we were going to deal with that situation. So we ramped things back up in October once we learned how to navigate Zoom and all those tools that we all had to use during the pandemic, and we became experts in that. So we did hold a virtual charrette for a whole week, and there was a number of things we did, invite the community in for that virtual charrette. So we did a hands-on public workshop, but it was through Zoom. We broke it into, Zoom has a lot of tools to break into small groups, took people's input. The nice thing about Zoom is you can just type right onto the screen. As people gave input, the consultants could put their comments right into the screen. And then also we had some studio times, virtual studio times where people could just zoom in and ask questions. They could see the work in progress. And then of course we had technical meetings with transportation folks, economics, public works, some of the business owners in the area, and did an online student survey. So at the end of all that, they did a work in progress report out, and after that, then they were really developing more of the details of the plan. They emphasized the current market realities in the plan because it was pretty important to see what was going on there. Some comments from the economists were that, U&I enrollment will really dictate the extent and place of new housing in the area, and in fact, redevelopment in the neighborhood. And the close-in College Hill can support small increments of new housing, but there wasn't a huge demand. It had been steady growth, but not a huge market there for significant amounts of new housing. The other comment was that new housing development would not occur without parking adjustments. That was the big impediment they identified, both in the zoning and in the market analysis. And then also there's been a big discussion about the diversity of retail on the Hill, and there needs to be a bigger retail base. In other words, more people living in the neighborhood, more people going to the Hill in order to create that greater diversity of businesses on the Hill. So how do we get there? That's what we're talking about. And then, of course, it's been in the plan for a very long time to connect that lower Hill and upper Hill to better support businesses in the area and improve the quality of the public spaces to create that sort of oomph to the marketing of the area. So the economists pointed out that without a new approach, opportunities for redevelopment are basically locked up. And that's why we haven't seen a lot of change in the College Hill neighborhood. So things that the plan points out, some things that probably need to change in the area if the desire is to have redevelopment occur or enhancements to occur, we need to look at some of those things pretty closely. The big ideas that came out of the public meetings from the folks that participated in the charrette, people were interested in stabilizing and enhancing the neighborhoods around College Hill, and concentrating and intensifying the student housing right near campus. And reconnecting that upper and lower Hill, people continue to talk about that, the gaps in that commercial business district, and then treat the natural areas. Dry Run Creek runs right through there, maybe enhance that with amenities, add street trees to make it a more pleasant area. And then again, to manage the parking better and coordinate with the University of Northern Iowa on that. And continue to improve the walkability of the area, make biking easier, and increase the retail and dining options. That was a desire of people that participated. How you get the market to respond to that is a tough question. So the plan also has character areas. They looked at the different areas of the College Hill within the boundaries of that to identify what kind of place is it now and what kind of place might it be in the future if we made changes. The consultants reminded everybody that character is not the same as land use. You can have the same use, but a very different character. As you can see on the screen, these are townhomes that have a very different character. Similar here, you can have retail, you can have Target out at a shopping mall, or you can have Target on an urban street. They're very different characters, same use. So what kind of character we want to have in the College Hill area? We have traditional neighborhoods. We have a Main Street commercial corridor here. The public realm means the spaces between the building along the street. That's how people experience the city, is those spaces between the buildings. This, of course, is a very different environment. So identifying those character areas in the plan, there's 9 different character areas. You can read those in the plan and what those mean. It goes from the heart of College Hill, which is right in the business district, to the area that's directly adjacent and the general College Hill neighborhood area. Number 3 is the University neighborhood. That's the blue area there. That's the area that's the transition between the College Hill Business District, the intense area where there's a lot of student housing, that blue area, transitioning out toward the lower intensity traditional neighborhoods surrounding College Hill Business District. So there's a lot of rentals in all of these neighborhoods, but they gradually become lower intensity as you go away from the core of the College Hill area. And of course, it includes a little portion of Main Street there on both sides, south between 12th Street or between 18th Street, and Searly Boulevard. That area is included in this plan. That's a mix of commercial, intensive commercial, and some residential. And then there's a little pocket of neighborhood there that's fairly stable. That's the little purple area there. And then the Fairview neighborhood is single family, largely more homeowner occupied there. And then the southwest area, that was part of the original College Hill plan overlay. So we included it here and expanded it a little bit to include pieces that would not otherwise be, that's kind of cut off from other parts of the neighborhood. So we included that whole piece with this plan. And then talking about the College Hill Gateway at Searly Boulevard and Main Street. The plan also has some descriptions of different types of frontages, and what that means is how the building meets the street, what's the character of the buildings in a traditional neighborhood, in a storefront neighborhood, and what defines those. So you can look at that more carefully. I won't go through the details of that. And then the plan really zeroes in on that central core area where there's more redevelopment potential, and to see kind of what is that vision? Can we illustrate that? Because a lot of people can't really visualize what it means for change to happen. What does it mean when we want this to change? How is that going to change? What's it going to look like? What's the potential here? So the consultants took some sites within this area that they could illustrate some of the principles of the plan. And those were those what-if scenarios. What if something changed? How could it be made better? And so illustrated those in the plan. So there were various areas of the plan, and you can see they tried to show what could happen if you did infill in the neighborhood that was consistent with that traditional neighborhood. What might that look like? How do we want context-sensitive infill to occur? The gateway, of course, we're doing a gateway right now with the Main Street project. We're going to do a roundabout there. So it's going to look much different than what they're showing in the plan here, but the idea was that with any enhancement of an intersection like that, you could potentially see some redevelopment occur. Now, obviously, it's not going to look like this because we've got a roundabout plan, but that will be a nice entranceway as well. And then this idea of connecting the upper and lower hill. This is a little bit oriented a little bit oddly. This is looking southeast, and The building, you can see Bonnie's there with the parking lot all around it up in the upper right-hand corner. And then the houses that are south of that. What if that whole block, we're talking about connecting that upper and lower hill area, what happens if that redevelops? You get more of that commercial Main Street type character. And then Urban Evangel is another part of the team. They do computer visualizations by taking photographs and enhancing those to see kind of how that could be transformed. If you just improve the elements along, add street trees, some of those public realm things that we could do with the streetscape. What happens if Bonnie's redevelops into a more Main Street type character down the street? And what if that last piece fills in? You get a much different feeling commercial area, much more complete, and not the holes in it that we have kind of right now. So that's what it is right now. And then what happens if there's some redevelopment potential near the university with more student housing? How could that occur? There is a lot of information in the plan about there's going to need to be some adjustments to the parking in order to achieve any additional density in these areas, and some ideas on how that might be accomplished. So you want to look at that, some of that information if you're interested. And then this idea of what about that little closed piece of 23rd Street? Could that be something more than it is now, that closed piece? What happens if we make it into more of an aesthetically pleasing little plaza? What happens if that also redevelopments? There's some deteriorating buildings there along that street on the south side. What happens if we enhance the public realm? And what happens if we encourage redevelopment to occur along that street? It becomes much more active, and you could potentially have some nice festivals there, places for farmers market or other events on the hill that's right across the street from the entrance to UNI. And then, of course, this big super block that is where the Hidden Valley area is. And really also there's floodplain in this area. So some challenges to this area. Super block is hard to get to redevelop. But so the plan kind of tackles that, and also talks about the enhancements to those areas along Dry Run Creek. Could you make that more of an amenity, more of a trail, more of a greenway, maybe sort of a pedestrian street? And then what happens with some of that floodplain? You could potentially add some more parking there. That would be a shared element. They had this idea of creating some additional parking there that could then be a place where you would sync the parking there so that some of the smaller sites could redevelop and still have parking close by in a place that you wouldn't be able to get much redevelopment because it's in the floodplain. And then the Hidden Valley site is underdeveloped right now, so if you created more of a block system there is some redevelopment potential in that particular area. So again, I won't recap all these big ideas. It's the same thing that we talked about before. But then at the end of the plan, it talks about the next steps and some of those things that we would do next, which we look at the zoning. What are the kinds of things that would help us achieve the goals in the plan? What about those partnerships with UNI? Looking at that parking, not just the parking requirements, but the parking policies and what's happening between the city parking and UNI parking. So a lot of good things in the plan. I just touched on very high level, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, thank you. I'll open it up for any questions. Or yes, Councilmember DeBurr.
Sure. Would you put up the slide again that's on page 29, or it also says page 34, so I'm not sure if it's 29 or 34.
Character areas.
The character areas?
Yeah.
Sure. See if I can find it here.
Yeah, well, it says 29 here, and it says 34 here, so I'm not sure which it is.
This is the one.
I got 29.
The square is the current.
The square is the current number.
presentation.
I'm almost there. There we are.
Okay. See, I've heard you talk a lot about the College Hill neighborhood, and this is the map that you've given. All the plans that you talk about for revitalizing and changing it are basically in character area 1, 2, or 3, where you take on the Clark Drive, Laurel Circle, Summit Drive that are on the northwest corner. They're in the purple up there. They don't have the same needs or problems as what 1, 2, and 3 have. Or if you take on the northeast side, you know, you've got State Street, well, not State Street, but you got 12th, 13th, 14th. If you come down a little bit where it's got in the green paragraph, that's where you got State Street. You mentioned the section down there in the green, down in the bottom. You've added even to the College Hill neighborhood by adding south of the creek. If we're going to really, like, they nickname this Revitalize the Hill, but yet this plan is 26 blocks north and south and approximately 16 blocks east and west. What would we have to do to reduce this to what you're actually talking about with the plan, with what you want to revitalize, which is in this blue, red, and orange, 1, 2, and 3? What do we have to do to actually get to the core of what you're talking about? Because all those other neighborhoods you talked about, the purple, the yellow, the green, they're not even talked about in this report.
So those areas are talked about in the report as being, so it's the vision plan. So what are the vision for those areas is to stabilize those
But
areas.
every plan that you talk about for revitalizing is all in section 1, 2, and 3.
But there are probably things we need to do to stabilize some of those neighborhoods and make sure, if the goal is to help preserve the character of those neighborhoods and not changing is also a vision. So if we want to say, what's going to prevent things from changing in that area that we don't want to have happen because we want it to stay the same character it is now, that's just as much of a goal as revitalizing or encouraging redevelopment. So the plan is about the vision of the whole area, and if the vision is to stabilize and maintain what's there and the character of it, that is also something we need to look at to say, are there things that are going to potentially interfere with the stabilization of those neighborhoods? We can look at the difference between rentals and owners in that area. Can we stabilize that? Can we encourage more home ownership in some of these areas that are turning to more rentals? You know, what kinds of things can we do to rehab existing homes, provide incentives for people to do that if they want to be a homeowner in this area, more affordable housing in this area, but be able to support people that want to live in these neighborhoods. So there's a number of things we can do to stabilize.
But it's allowing things that were not currently allowed.
Not necessarily. We don't know that yet until we haven't developed any zoning tools or incentives yet. That's the next step of the process.
Karen, real quick, I have a question. Is this entire area all in the overlay, or is it beyond the overlay?
So it is beyond what the original overlay was, but the idea was we were trying to cover, if you remember, the original goal of updating the zoning code was to go and try to bite off pretty big chunks of the city so we didn't have to do little tiny plans everywhere. So when we talked about the areas of this plan, we looked at what could we include here in the College Hill Vision Plan that would be south of the downtown district that we just did and make some sense with the boundaries. And, you know, it's all, you know, up for debate what those boundaries were, but those were all agreed upon before we went forward with the planning.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Cruz?
Thank you. I'm a little puzzled here on some of the responses for Susan's questions, I guess. You say you want to stabilize the neighborhoods, yet if we change these into neighborhood medium, neighborhood small, we're taking away the old zoning of R1, R2, and the protection they have so that triplexes and fourplexes don't get built there. What I see coming through the downtown character changes and the form-based zoning, they want missing middle market. I know you didn't use those words in this presentation, but that's going to pop into all these neighborhoods here, and it's going to upset these people because the discussion on planning and zoning is always density. We want more density. They like density. Density is another word for congestion. These neighborhoods here in number 4, you call it Searly Park and Clay Street Park neighborhoods. If you could put that, you got it up there, thank you. The number 4, the north part of that area is dramatically different than the way bottom down on 28th and 29th. Number 3, University neighborhood should be expanded to come down to 29th, cover the north part of number 8, because it's student population now, and we should be looking at what's on the west side of campus, because people come to you and I to go to the university, students. If we didn't have the university, we wouldn't have students. If we didn't have students, we wouldn't have College Hill, because they come here to socialize, or they end up socializing at the College Hill, and to a greater extent now they're going downtown. But that's another discussion on why they're doing that. But I think the character areas need to be dramatically adjusted before it goes to planning and zoning. That's why I brought this up. Your number 3, University neighborhood, realistically goes east until Tremont, north to 18th, goes west to include the quarters, Gold Falls, Point West. Those are all student housing. Big part of them are. Anybody can live anywhere, but for the most part, they're within a walk of campus. We can improve, like we've said in here, to improve College Hill, connect north and south, or upper or lower, I guess. A whole variety of these things are great. I like them. But the biggest problem I have is when we adopted this, we hand it to planning and zoning staff, and they make the new zone changes according to this map here, these character areas. And they will never allow us to change them. They have every single thing that we sent back to them, they fought us and resisted us.
So
Okay, so what I really, there's other things I'd like to comment, if I may. You made the remark, as you move away from College Hill, the student housing is less intense. I think what you mean is as you move away from campus, the housing is less intense.
Sure.
The College Hill happens to be a little subset nestled next to campus, which is popular in any college town.
Right.
Okay, so I think the focus of this, it's certainly great to look at enhancements for retail and all the things that were commented here on that, but these character areas are going to, the intent appears, and people have said this to me, it says, Daryl, why are we promoting apartment buildings next to the bars and the vape shops? Exact words that came out of somebody's mouth. Okay, that's a big concern. I mean, there is no shortage of vape shops on the Hill. I don't want to be derogatory, but there was other businesses in some of these, but they moved on, and then what came in is a vape shop. So I want to see a change and some time looking at the character areas and get a true idea of what they really are. The university neighborhood, number 3, like I say, should come down and just wrap around underside of the campus and come around on the west side, because that's the university neighborhood. It's a student neighborhood, okay? General College Hill, to me, is maybe a block around number 1, is what I would say it is. Because once you get a block to the west of College Hill, that I would just be considered university neighborhood, and that's many of the apartment buildings are there. So, because from these character areas, planning and zoning is going to come forward with rigid things that they won't want to change, and we want to try to adjust them, and they're typically not willing to change.
I want to get to some other council members. Sorry. Councilmember Schultz, go ahead.
Well, I'll add that this doesn't happen very often, but I sort of agree with Daryl.
Thank you.
And Susan. Happens even less. No. There is, I think, some work we need to be looking at, to Daryl's point and Susan's point, that 1, 2, and 3 is really the focus and the scope. It is. It's, all the way down to the University Credit Union and connecting with 8. That is all student housing. Everything to the west is. And to really, we're maybe too broad of a scope when we start reaching down to the, 18th, Main and 18th, and maybe take another swath at this to really focus on that area of probably from 18th Street down to the credit union, which I believe is on 27th or something, and then over even, into the apartments on the west of Hudson Road. But that's really the campus and the college core of the housing. So that's all I wanted to kind of.
So just a comment that this is the plan, it's not the zoning. So the zoning in the College Hill neighborhood is different than the zoning that was in the downtown. So the downtown zoning that we tackled, those areas were already zoned high density, R3 and R4, commercial designations. This neighborhood is not. The number 4 and number 7 areas, some of those areas are zoned R2 and R1. And so the idea is not necessarily to change the zoning designations.
Yeah, and
We
I'm
do have
I'm
to-
not talking about zoning, Karen. I did hope so. Sorry if I confused that too. I'm talking one. I own some property in this green spot up in the top left-hand corner that I'm hoping not to occupy anytime soon. And
I do as well.
yeah, we're going to be neighbors forever, sires.
The cemetery.
But the 7 and 4, if we can go to what I understand you being indicating of the stabilization, that is the housing conversion from rentals to single-family home owned and things like that, where if we're going to really look at College Hill, I think we got to look physically at the area that has been described from 18th down south to the campus and from Tremont over to Hudson Road, maybe a little farther.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
So, yes, Councilmember Dunn.
Karen, has anything changed since we adopted? Have we actually made any changes to, and I just don't remember, have we made any zoning changes or
No, we haven't moved
Okay,
forward with any
so we're still
zoning
at the
changes.
vision part because we adopted the vision, but we've not moved, I'm saying this, we've not moved on from downtown, and we've taken the funding away from moving forward with any possible updates with zoning. So I know I'm repeating what Karen's saying, but I don't think that we're understanding. This is the reason there, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. The reason there are different areas is because when you're looking at a vision, obviously what's good for the 7 area isn't going to be the same as what's going on in the 1 area or any of these numbers. I mean, they're all different areas of town, right? Isn't that kind of why there's different areas in the
Right.
And I also think about, this is kind of off, it's not off topic. I think about the reason we need to make our way through these updates in our zoning. We have a area of town that's going to be brought forward to us. We've all been receiving lots of emails on lately. And to me, there's a perfect example of needing to have clearer rules, because if you don't have clear rules, then you've got a developer that's, not maybe clear on what is expected from the city. You've got citizens upset because they thought there was this kind of a plan, and now there's possible, I guess you take the politicalness out of it. So I guess I'm saying that is to all of us, and I maybe incorrect in my thinking, but that's the reason why it's important to go around to all these areas. And like you said, it's nice, or it's good to bite off a bigger chunk so we can get through town. We have a fairly large area in Cedar Falls. Is that kind of why we're biting off a good chunk of town?
I think part of it was that we have really old zones. And some of those zones may be working perfectly fine, and we don't want to make a lot of changes other than a few tweaks. And some of these areas may be those areas. So maybe we just look at those areas and say, oh, well, it's doing what we want it to do, or maybe there's just a couple little tweaks we need to make. You don't necessarily need to do a form-based code to make a couple of tweaks in the ordinance, but it's a chance to look at those areas to find out if there are some little tweaks that are not working quite the way we want them to work in our existing zoning, and make those little changes to that. The core area may take something more than just a few tweaks. It needs maybe a major overhaul.
And then, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead,
I keep rambling
Councilmember
here.
Nunn.
So again, I want to reiterate that this is a vision. We haven't even done anything with it. We adopted it, but it's sat since 2021, so over 2.5 years, and that's not been because of anyone but this body. We haven't moved it forward. Why are there vape shops on College Hill? Well, I'm not an economist or economy expert, but I guess that's who wants to pay the rent on those buildings right now. And if you're a landlord or own a building down there, then I guess instead of letting something sit vacant, you're probably going to let those folks have their business there. Now, to me, it's kind of like if you make it someplace that businesses want to be, then all of a sudden maybe, hey, I'll pay you a little bit more, and maybe the business that people are worried about, maybe they move somewhere else that's more economical, right? Rent goes up, and maybe those folks move out, and we have a little more diversity. But right now, we have to have a place where people want to be. And I don't know how many people actually go up to College Hill and partake, but I'm pretty proud patron of College Hill, and I usually walk from my home, which is over by Pete Junior High, and I walk the neighborhoods. I don't know that, I notice a lot more families living in that area, and I'm not talking about down by Clay Street or anything like that. I'm talking about close to Olive Street and Walnut Street. Not everybody's a family, but there are definitely more little kids riding bikes than there were when I was going to school in 1996. I guess the main concern I have is why, when it's sat for 2.5 years because of the majority of this body, why are we wanting to dive into it? Maybe we should just let it be and then discuss it at goal setting, because we all know that this body is going to change greatly in the next few months. So I'm a little worried about the motive behind bringing it up.
I'm just, as a presiding officer, I want to bring a couple things forward. So, and clear some things up so we can proceed to this meeting. One, it seems like we want to have some rearrangements of the character districts, and there's maybe some good ideas about extending things and focusing on certain parts. I can get behind all that. The main thing is that we do something with College Hill and really help them out. So, but I want to see what is our purpose here at this meeting, because this body is going to change, and so we can rehash this. It's obviously a controversial, I'm not necessarily set in stone on these character areas. I'm not ashamed to admit that I don't know the College Hill area as well, probably as Daryl and Gil owning land and stuff. What I know is from traveling down there and making music and playing and just enjoying the area and talking to citizens that I represent. But that being said, I don't want to sit here and go over a presentation that I've now watched 4 times to not have an outcome. So what's the outcome? It definitely needs to be talked about at goal setting no matter what, because there'll be new council members. And I hesitate, based off of learning the lesson of what happened with downtown and changing things greatly depending on who's elected, then changing it back, and we're wasting money and time. So I would like, at this point, unless someone has something amazing to say, revelation about this, to get an idea of what are we trying to achieve here at this meeting. Is there a motion? Is there something we're going to try to push towards council, or what are we doing here?
Chairman Simon?
Yes, council member.
I don't know how
Fires.
amazing this is going to be, but
Coming from you, it could be amazing.
I agree with the other 3 councilmen at the other end. When I think College Hill, I think 1, 2, and 3. when you start to go around here in all these big areas, the housing does change greatly, and the properties that Gil and I were talking about were up there in the cemetery. Those are the ones he's talking about. So the whole thing is, when you start to look at these areas, I like to let people live a little bit and not be so restricted. And I like to see them improve their houses with a lot of things they'd like to do. But when you start to talk College Hill and the issues there with commercial and the high density, I'd like to see it focused on 1, 2, and 3 as well. That's all.
Other council members that have, yes, Councilmember DeBurr had her hand up first.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the council will be changing, and before I leave, once we get the ball rolling, it seems like it's hard to get it stopped. And so that's why I wanted to bring this back. I'd like to focus on the areas 1, 2, 3, where we can actually try to do something instead of this huge chunk. And so what I'd like to do is, that's why I was trying to find out, what do we have to do to stop this vision plan and redo it to something that we can actually bite off instead of this big chunk. If we have to repeal it and then reapprove, 1, 2, 3 down, and plus that extra block and a half, I think that's a good start.
I would ask a question of staff. Have we done anything? We haven't done anything
You've
with the
adopted
plan.
it, so we'd have to repeal it.
Correct. But as far as the adoption was, we haven't done anything since it's been adopted because we specifically gave staff, don't do anything yet. So we could continue to say, don't do anything. Otherwise, you're essentially just doing what you criticized others for doing in 2020 by, oh, the council's changing, so I'm going to put
Point of order,
this.
if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
You're debating each individual response. As the chair, you should now Gil needs to speak and let others speak.
I've only spoken once.
Well,
and
you've responded to just about everything, but that's your style. That's okay.
That's fine. It is my style, and I'm the presiding officer, so I'll do what I want. And secondly, I only have spoken once on this meeting until just then. That was the second time.
Okay.
Stephanie was trying to answer your
But I'll go back to Stephanie, and I'll try to be more courteous. Go ahead, Stephanie.
What are you wanting me to answer at this point?
Well, you had asked the question.
The question I had asked was, since we've adopted it, have we done anything, or have we just told staff to wait and we haven't done anything?
Council has directed staff to wait. Staff has done nothing.
Thank you.
But as a follow-up to
Councilmember
that, if this is the adopted plan, as you move forward, this is what you would go forward with. Is that correct?
Anything we would move forward with is at council's direction. So the council could decide in a contract about zoning, for example, if we want to look at that, that you just want to focus on areas 1, 2, and 3, for example. You could have a contract that does all of them, but says we just want tweaks in these 2 neighborhoods. So it's entirely up to the council.
But the more area you add to it, the longer it's going to take and the more expensive it's going to be.
Sure.
Other council members?
Gil was.
Just to
Councilmember
reiterate what I
Schultz.
was, what my vision was, when I see College Hill vision, it's 1, 2, and 3. And I guess we can make a referral at some point. I'd like to see it sooner than later, that we give some guidance and some permission, if it is to staff, to say, hey, go out and get something going for 1, 2, and 3 that isn't already going, if that's what you need, because I'm all for that.
Councilmember
Thank you.
Cruz?
So to Kelly's point a little bit ago, we have a vision for the College Hill, but it's very important with any visioning. I'm a financial planner. I talk with clients about retirement goals, college education, so on and so on. It's very important that the bedrock components of a financial plan or a visioning plan have the proper criteria going into it. And what was said a little over through Susan and Gil, that the number 3, the university neighborhood, I'd say is flawed. It needs to be changed and enhanced. A comment by Ms. Howard was that we'd want to have a conversion to owner-occupied from rental, but that program had limited use and interest in it for whatever reason. we talk about the old zoning, but the old zoning is updated almost multiple times a year. So it's not really old, it's just what it is. But to really align and get a better grasp of this, I think I guess I'd make a motion to repeal it in its current form and then have a modification committee meeting to discuss some of the criteria to do so going forward.
The motion's out of order. This committee cannot repeal adoption of the College Hill Vision Plan. This committee could refer to council to take that measure up, though.
So do we refer it to
Regular council.
agenda item?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to refer this as an agenda item to be taken up by council at the next council meeting. Is that proper?
That'll do it.
Perfect.
Second.
All right. I think everybody's talked twice, so I'm going to talk again just for a second. Then I'm going to go back and add up the minutes of people talking too. But I think it's Dustin's winning with 0. Again, if you guys want to change this, I'm okay with it. If you want to move some stuff around and do some stuff, I'm okay with it. I would say that it's hypocritical to do it now because I learned my lesson it's right before a major election when a lot of people are running on zoning for College Hill. That's one of the issues, and you're trying to do something before we're off that, you know, it's like having your cake and eating it too. So it puts a bad taste in my mouth because it just does. It seems.
It brings the points forward that we're concerned with.
Correct. And I think there are other ways we could do that besides.
We got people in the audience.
We'll let them speak. But anyway, I'm just saying, I think it should be dealt with by the next council. That's all. Otherwise, it's doing the same thing that you were mad about. Any other council members want to speak on this motion?
Chairman Simon?
Yes.
I just have a question for Karen Howard. It's pretty easy. You don't have to come up to the front. The yellow, is that in the overlay too? How specific is that for, when you upgrade your home in that area in all of the yellow?
I don't recall exactly how far the overlay district went, but it was farther than the blue area. It included some of the yellow area.
Did it go
And it included
just,
the green area down, portion of the green area down below.
did it go straight east, that blue area on the overlay? That's okay. I'll just talk to you about it later. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to go ahead and get anyone, since we are in a motion, I would allow anyone to speak from the audience / people in the chambers.
Good evening, Hannah Chrisman, Cedar Falls. I am the president of the College Hill Partnership. We, as an organization, are in full support of the vision plan as is. We have members who live in the full area, as shown on the map. We also have members who live outside of that. And we contributed to the vision plan, and we are proud of the vision plan as it stands. And if there is any action, we hope that it is to update the code, not make changes to the vision plan. Thank you.
Any other members from the chambers like to speak? Welcome.
Danny Loddick, 4516 Coronado Court. Excuse me. It's kind of a question for council. One thing I would ask is the repealing necessary, or could we look at, since we've kind of put a pause on it, could we also look at just amending the zones, kind of re-looking at some of those? Because I agree that it sounds like the main impetus is to look at redeveloping the core of College Hill, and that's really where we need a lot of focus. Is repealing it the necessary step? Because then it seems like there's a lot of weight that goes with the idea of repealing it. Or can we look at making an adjustment, an amendment to the plan, re-looking at some of the zones, and then using that as council goes forward to bring back to staff, here are the new zones or the amended versions of it that we would like to say we should move forward with.
Thank you. I guess, yeah, staff, I believe we had that answer, that's possible, but I'd just like to get clarification to the question.
If the question was like, for example, the exhibit that we've been talking about, the map and referring to the different colors, if the request is, can we create a new map that then is like adopted by a resolution by the council, for example, of the modified areas, that's possible.
Okay. Other members from the audience chambers that would like to speak?
I told myself I wasn't going to speak tonight, but
Name and address.
Frank Dara,
Just city.
15 Green Hill Drive.
Thanks.
Cedar
Welcome.
Falls, Iowa. I too am on the College Hill Partnership Board. I was also on the council when we first started talking about this vision. And to me, you've adopted this vision, but you've not acted on any of it. To me, it's only a vision. It gives you talking points to move forward with where you want to go, but there's no commitment to anything. It seems to me that you as a council should look at prioritizing in this plan, where do we want to focus right now? Other things can be talked about in committees or kick the can down the road further, but when you make a vision, it's strictly that. It gives you something to think about. It gives you something to visualize in the future, and then do your work around those things. But rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater, why not just prioritize scratch where it itches, what's our biggest priority right now, and then let the professional staff and the people that work up there work together to try to improve it. All this is a guide for you to make decisions. So why did we spend all the money and take all that time to develop a plan like this and then just arbitrarily throw part of it out? You don't have to throw it out, just don't address it until you're ready. It's simple.
Thank you, Frank. Anyone else from the chambers like to speak on this item?
Adam Bolander, Cedar Falls, representing College Hill Partnership here tonight. I think it's a simple case of, is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? And you probably are staring at me like, what are you talking about? But it's as easy as this. We have momentum on College Hill right now. Pedersen Plaza just got finished. It's beautiful if you haven't walked down it yet. The Octopus is doing a renovation. Cooper's just moved in where the hydrant was. Searly Park is moving forward. The gateway off of Main and Searly. If you look at the district as a whole, the glass is half full, it's not half empty. But what's funny about that is College Hill Partnership is not seeing the support that we should be getting at this point. You know, you pointed out yourself, UNI is a huge part of Cedar Falls. UNI is, you know, potentially the heartbeat of Cedar Falls, yet College Hill isn't even in the CIP right now, I'm pretty sure. So it's like, where's the support for College Hill? If the glass is half full, which it is, ask anybody on College Hill Partnership, you have the responsibility right now to help us finish filling that glass. And I think it's time to do that. So let's not stall things. If you want to put a donut over your map and focus on the inner circle of the donut before you expand, absolutely, I think that's the direction to go. But let's fill the glass. Let's be leaders. Let's make Cedar Falls. Let's give some credibility to our students who, you know, we want UNI to thrive. We've seen enrollment go up. So now it's time to start putting some focus on College Hill.
Thank you. Other members? Here we go.
Thank you. Aaron Hobbaker, 2309 Iowa Street. Actually, I agree with everything that was just said. I think I can put maybe a finer tune on it a little bit. I see the vision plan and the areas that are described there, 1 through 7 or 1 through 8, as descriptive and educational. That was a group sitting down and saying that these are the different areas of this particular region that have different characters, and to inform the council when those zoning decisions are made down the road. And that's where the rubber will hit the road, when those zoning decisions are made. So it seems counterproductive, because I agree that we should build off the momentum that we have on College Hill. It seems counterproductive to repeal this particular vision, which is exactly what it is, on the incorrect assumption that somehow those zones tie you to zoning decisions. They do not. They are descriptive and educational about the characters of the neighborhood and should help us be informed, or the council members be informed about how zoning changes in 1, 2, and 3 would affect 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. So please do not repeal it. Leave it in place and then do the hard work on zoning down the road to keep that momentum that we have going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Name and city?
Yeah, hi, my name is Chris Martin. I live at 421 West Searly, in the yellow part of the map, Area 4, I believe. I live in College Hill, I work in College Hill, I walk through several of these zones every single day. I've been a founding member of the College Hill Partnership. I really love and kind of breathe this neighborhood, and I've worked at UNI for more than 25 years. When the College Hill Partnership was founded more than a dozen years ago, then President Allen talked about College Hill as being the front doorstep or the front porch of the university. And I think by delaying this plan more, we kind of delay the opportunity to make that front porch a better looking porch. Imagine a really crappy looking porch. That's what we don't want people to see when they come to UNI and think about being a student at the university. We want to give them the best look possible, and this is right adjacent to the university. We want to give them the best possible experience about what it would be like to live in the College Hill neighborhood. I agree, 1, 2, and 3, those areas are the areas that need the most attention, but the other areas surrounding those kind of educational or visual regions are also tied. There's not a fence between each of these areas. They all flow together. I live just a little bit outside on the east side of Searly Park, but I see how all these things tie together, and that the attention needs to be on College Hill. Every time I visit another university campus around the country and come back, I just say to my wife, why can't we have nice things on College Hill? And I know it's capable in this city. I see the beautiful things that are happening downtown. I see the beautiful planning that goes on in the industrial park. I see the beautiful planning going on in other areas. And I think it's time, long overdue, 2.5 years, to actually give that attention to College Hill.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience before we come back? All right, I'm going to open it back up to council, but I want to stay pertinent to the motion on the table right now, which is the motion to push to have a resolution repealing the adoption at the next meeting. So are there council members that have questions about that motion or want to talk about that motion? I'd like to thank the audience for speaking and raising some good points.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, council members, Cruz.
I guess everything we're talking about here has to do with whether we repeal or go to council with a discussion of repealing, and how do we do that? The people that spoke are very passionate about the core of the hill, but all their comments were just about the core, which we agree we can help, well, some of the surrounding areas, and you went out. But they didn't answer to some of the concerns we brought up about these character areas being out of line, and to change it, we have to change this before it goes to planning and zoning, because once it gets to planning and zoning, they're going to draw the fences, the lines, and say these are the areas, and it's impossible to change, because we heard from some of the speakers that they like it just like this is proposed. And there are very significant flaws in it, as said by us, so they need to be listening.
And that's fine. And
okay.
So the motion is we can repeal. The other option, which has been brought forward and mentioned, is that we could amend the map and amend the scope at which we want to focus on, which I would be amenable to. So I think right now we just need to decide, do we repeal or not? And that's where we're at for the motion. So yes, Councilmember DeBurr.
Can Attorney Rogers indicate whether the differences between the amending or repealing, or which would be cleaner or easier for staff to do? Or
I would say a targeted amendment would be a simpler process if that's what council wants to do. It seems like if repealing, wouldn't you have to replace it with something? And so that means development of a whole new plan. And how does that happen? Do we start over completely? So if there's a targeted change that council's after, they could amend points of it, but it's an extensive document, so we'd need to be, I hate to say this, but we may have to work up some sort of writing for committee to go through on the plan if there's amendments to be proposed. So staff would need direction on that. I don't think we can just wave a wand over it unless it's specifically, we want to focus on 1, 2, and 3, for example. That sort of amendment would be pretty simple.
Okay. And if they were to do that, would you need the motion to be a friendly amendment to change the word from repeal to amend?
It depends on what council wants to do. If you want to go full on to repeal, that's completely up to council.
Councilmember Schultz had his hand up.
Yeah, Attorney Rogers, so what would be the wording for focusing, as Mr. Martin was saying, why can't we have something nice on College Hill? I'm not saying that the entire character area or the vision plan needs to be wiped out, but I think at this time, I'm kind of stalled out at 2.5 years of not getting anything done with this either. And when we look at what really needs help right now is probably 1, 2, and 3. Adam brought up some stuff that is being done and some momentum, all having to do with the city, the staff, the council, the main and Searly, the Hugh Pedersen, who I rented a building from on College Hill, was a great guy, and Searly Park. Those are all things that collectively we've done together, and we haven't ignored that area. It's just, I think, in 1, 2, and 3, how can we get that ball rolling in there and not get too wide of a scope of vision going, here's the area from, might as well include North Cedar to College Square, for crying out loud, let's get it down to 1, 2, and 3, and Karen, what can we do?
So I'd like to compare this to the overall comprehensive plan. We have lots of goals in that plan. You had a presentation of that. And the idea is the council can choose to focus on certain things. So you don't have to do anything with the plan. You could just say, what we want to do right now is just focus on new zoning tools for the central part of this and not worry. I think several of the community members said that you don't have to move forward with everything all at once. It's a vision plan for the future. So you could just decide right now, all we're going to do is look at the zoning for that central piece.
All right, how do we do that? What's the wording on that?
We're currently in a motion.
Mr. Chair.
So one second, you're up next. We're currently in a motion, and so we would need to deal with that motion before we move on to other options. So Mr. Cruz, and then we'll go ahead and deal with the motion.
So we talk about working on 1, 2, and 3, which is fine. But Gil and Sue, a number of us agreed that 3 isn't well defined. Okay, we need to look at where it should really encompass. Because like I said earlier, the reason we have a College Hill is because the students are here because of the college. The central life of a student is the admissions office, the library, and student union, and then they live all around the perimeter. So the livelihood of the College Hill, if you want to call it that, has to do with student population in probably a little more than just 1, 2, and 3, but then, I think number 3 should be expanded. We got to talk about the focal point of number 3.
Fair.
Okay, so to Mr. Rogers' point, or I guess others, about repealing, it's not like we take it and throw it in the wastebasket. It's a tremendous framework to start. Like we say, we're not happy with the scope of number 3. Should it go over to Tremont Street and up to 18th and down to Dry Run Creek? That used to be, I believe, the old overlay, if I'm correct. Went to Tremont and Dry Run and 18th. So that's the boundaries. If we had the College Hill overlay for that long, why wouldn't that now be the university neighborhood? It seems pretty logical to me. But I'm a little torn. I don't think it matters a lot, but I think repealing is cleaner. Then we discuss the points. We bring back everything then, but I could be wrong.
So go ahead, Ms.
I
Howard.
was going to say, you could, during your goal setting, decide that you want to focus on getting funding support for 1, 2, and 3, but also having a consultant look at and come in and look at the boundaries of 3 if that needs to be expanded. So that could be the scope of what we would fund then, just to move that forward. It wouldn't necessarily have to amend the plan. You could just have them focus on that. And there was a lot of public input on the plan, so that would allow that to move forward and get some of that public input at the same time.
To your point, we don't need a consultant coming in from Denver, Tennessee, and Pennsylvania to tell us how. I've been on the Hill since 1976. It's the first time I stepped foot on campus when I was in high school. I've lived in the dorms, Gold Falls, in housing, own housing. I am very thoroughly familiar with the nuances of the College Hill area.
I want to go to Susan real quick, but I also want to say that I do think that we could probably in-house rearrange 3. Councilmember DeBurr.
Sure. Karen, when you guys when you did the downtown form-based zoning, didn't you use the character areas for what you did for zoning was based off of the character area?
Right, but it went through the whole public process.
Correct.
So there was a chance to say, okay, we know we don't want this in this area, or we don't want that. I think with the College Hill one, the dividing line here, the area under number 3, I think that area is currently zoned R3, and the area that's in 4 is zoned R2.
Yeah.
So that's where the boundary, I think, was established kind of right there, that transition into the lower intensity zoning areas that are there now.
Thank you. But because we use those character areas for the first time we did this, that's why I think it's really important that we narrow down this plan or this vision to the character areas that we really want. So that's why I think we need to either repeal or amend.
So, and I'm okay with focusing as long as we get the ball rolling, like Councilmember Schultz said. So at the moment, the motion on the table is to repeal. So we need to either remove that motion and replace it with something, or we need to take a vote. So
Point of information.
yes.
The motion is to
correct. You are correct. It's to send it to council to the next meeting
And there we
as a
would
resolution,
decide.
and there we would decide. So with that, then I guess it doesn't look like we're going to take it off the table. So I would ask for a vote of all those in favor of the motion to send it to be repealed. Vote aye.
Aye.
To not send it, nay?
Nay.
All right. Hands, but it just looks like it looks like it will pass. All in favor? All right, so 4 in favor. So it does pass. It will be on the next meeting as a resolution to.
Council meeting.
Sorry, the next council meeting as a resolution to repeal.
Discuss repealing. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments on this? I believe we just wrapped that up, so we can go ahead and move over to the Public Works Committee.
Okay, so we stay with the same call to order and roll call. What we have on the Public Works tonight is the 12th and Clay Street update with Director Chase Schrage. So the order and then I will go is Director Schrage will discuss, and then we'll present, we'll discuss at council. I'll have then public comment, bring it back to council, and we'll look for any actions or motions, and that'll be the order that will go. So with that, you have the floor, Director Schrage.
Thank you, Chairman Schultz and council. Tonight's just to provide a brief update regarding the last council meeting and the discussion on West 12th Street. I believe all of you received an update from Administrator Gaines later that week of September 18th. Regarding some of the things we implemented that were discussed at the last meeting, which were paid at all 4 crosswalks, the international piano bar style. We added a pedestrian and crosswalk sign that's in the center of the roadway, increased signage for speed limits. We actually added a flashing light on the pedestrian crosswalk sign itself.
And then public safety aspects, we're providing a crossing guard at the location during the morning hours and then during the evening hours, as well as increased enforcement. I believe at the time, the update for that week was 44 traffic stops, and I believe now we're at approximately 96. Is that correct, Director Birdie? Okay. So that's kind of a quick overview of where we're at today. Just going to cover some of the items that maybe weren't covered at the previous meeting. I know we discussed them, but this is just an aerial photo of West 12th Street itself. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see Main Street. On the left-hand side is Hudson Road. All of those stop signs along the corridor showing the adjacent side streets stopping for 12th Street, with the exception of Walnut Street and College Street. It's also a four-way stop. We briefly touched on it at the last meeting, but I'm going to start in the lower right-hand corner. Traditional residential low-volume streets, the local streets, 10th Street, 11th Street, Tremont Street, things of that nature are considered local streets. As you move up the classifications, you have collectors, minor, and major. A good example of that would be if you leave one of those corridors that I just described on your way to work, you would travel over to College Street. College Street's considered a collector. You then travel north or south, southbound, you go to 12th Street, considered an arterial, and then you continue to move up. There is a classification of minor and principal arterials. Principal arterials are more of generally, they're most DOT roadways, interstates, highway systems, those types of things. And as you go up, the volumes go up on the street. Local streets are a few hundred. Collectors may be up to 1,000. Major collectors may be a little more than that. And then minor arterials are obviously a few thousand vehicles per day. This is just a broad overview of what's transpired in 2023. One of the largest construction seasons that we've had, both local work and DOT work. The orange is street closures. Most of you are aware of the southern closure on Main Street south of 18th to Searly, and then the northern closure between 6th and 11th. The yellow there is a signed detour route for that project, and also our local closure for the 18th Street reconstruction there. And off to the upper right of this photo, you can't really see it, but it would be 218 and 58 interchange, DOT works going on, and what we call the flyover. It would be basically northbound traffic on Highway 58 would not be able to enter into Cedar Falls on Highway 57, so a lot of the traffic, even on Highway 58, either have to exit for University Avenue or take 12th Street to get to the west side of Cedar Falls. So really the main arterial roadways to get from east to west are right now it's 12th Street and University Avenue. So part of the discussion last week was discuss speed bumps versus humps and maybe some pros and cons. Speed bump is generally it's used on private property. It becomes very hazardous on public roadways. It's short in length and high vertical deflection, 12 to 18 inches in length, and vertical is 4 to 6 inches. You'd see them in airport parking lots or private driveways, those types of things. Generally, they're not on the roadway because they become a hazard. Speed humps, on the other hand, are longer with less deflection, and they are rated for specific speeds in which you're targeting, and the goal of a speed hump is obviously to help lower the speed through driver discomfort of the vertical deflection. A few pros and cons of speed hump. Obviously, the attempt is to lower the speed through discomfort. Helps reinforce speeds without unnecessary stopping or delay with unwarranted sign installations, and then it has limited impacts to on-street parking. Cons are law enforcement, fire department, or vehicles with longer wheelbases it's very challenging for them. And then retrofitting of existing locations, drainage, that'd be curb line drainage. depending on where exactly they're located, additional signs and paint, and then attention to city services such as snow plowing. And then that last bullet point I'll cover here a little bit more on the next slide. Basically, a grid system street, we may have some unintended consequences thereafter by implementing certain things. So speed hump, generally these are used on collectors and local roadways, not on arterial roadways. Like local streets, it's fairly common. Collectors, you would be targeting speed, and arterials if it's not marked as a priority emergency route. And obviously, West 12th Street extends from, also Waterloo Road extends from University Avenue all the way to the western city limits. And then these programs for implementing generally target streets between 500 vehicles per day and 4,000 vehicles per day. And then at the bottom of the slide there, a few characteristics we discussed at the previous meeting for 12th Street width, and the DOT volumes in 2021 was 5,200 vehicles per day, and that's between the section of Main and Hudson Road. Obviously, West 12th Street's intended use is to carry higher volumes of traffic from east to west across city limits. It should be noted that any change in roadway characteristics may have unintended consequences for other streets. And what I mean by this is obviously there are streets that are designated for specific uses, and the public will find the most direct and fastest route regardless of what is implemented within the 12th Street corridor. So we may see traffic move to 10th Street or something that has less encumbrances for them to get to their destination. Similarly, installation of unwarranted stop sign have repeatedly shown that vehicle speeds after they've passed through a controlled intersection are as high or occasionally higher than without the stop sign. So motorists try to make up time, so to speak. And then part of the update previously was obviously we have data collection that's ongoing that began September 21st. And information that's collected is volume of traffic, number of cars, speed, and pedestrian counts, in which is crossing guards doing currently at this time. And then I thought I'd provide at least 24 months of crash history at the specific location of 12th and Clay where these improvements were made. There were 6 crashes in the last 24 months. 3 of the accidents were failure to stop at the stop sign on Clay Street. One of those 3 was due to icing conditions. I believe that was in January, where they actually slid through the stop sign. And then 2 of those 6 accidents were failure to yield, vehicles that were actually pulling out in front of someone on 12th Street. And then 1 accident was failure to maintain control, swerving for an animal in the roadway. Pedestrian counts so far for the past couple weeks are generally between 4 and 6 pedestrians. That's both for the morning hours and then for the later in the afternoon. There's approximately 4 or 6 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the evening. I can tell you that in speaking with Director Birdie that there are similar pedestrians crossing at the adjacent side streets, Franklin, Tremont, during similar times as well. One thing I did want to mention that actually we'll be talking about at goal setting. There are other communities that have implemented what they call traffic management programs or neighborhood traffic management programs. And what they target is basically engineering data, what's required to analyze a 4-way stop, traffic calming measures, neighborhood input. It has heavy involvement from planning, public safety, and engineering. And that's something we would like to talk about at this year's goal setting, with the intent of maybe during 2024, we'd be able to bring something forward to the council that we could potentially get implemented for the future. So I think that would better lay out kind of a process on how some of these things take place. And then I think that is really all I had as So I know some of this crossed over between public safety and myself, so if there are questions, one of the things I wanted to note was as we continue to collect data, we would provide an email update once we get a summary of everything we've gathered. We'd provide that information out to the council members at that time. So.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn to the council. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you. Thanks, Director Schrage. That was informative. Can you email that to everyone? But those slides, I'd like that.
Sure.
I still like, or think I like, the speed hump mainly on Clay Street, because there was comments that the speed on Clay Street was excessive and the width of Clay Street lends itself to no traffic calming when you got such a width, bike lanes, openness, and the speed going there. And with the idea it being temporary, some of these measures that we talk about, we know that that map of all the construction is going to be totally different next year and the year after, significantly, because 12th will no longer be traveled hardly at all.
Correct.
Next year, is that going to make it, or are we?
With the schedule right now, yes, 12th Street intersection is scheduled for next year.
Okay.
That moved from 12th to 18th.
So temporary things like the speed hump, is that a consideration? Do we got to give you authority to do that, say on Clay?
Clay Street, I do have a little data on that thus far. Obviously, it's a stop-controlled intersection. The counters were generally between 26 and 29 miles an hour.
Okay.
That would be that the counter was between 11th and 12th. If we could potentially at a later date move the counter more northerly to the middle of the section, so to speak. But
okay. So what you're saying is you're not excited about a speed hump anywhere?
the data for Clay Street right now, the information that I have is really not supportive to what you're targeting. But
it was interesting when you said the discomfort of going over the hump versus, it's there 24 hours a day as opposed to the measures that our public safety is doing to, catch people in the act, where the speed hump's always there 24 hours a day.
Well, our police are on duty 24. I think they're still on 24, aren't they?
Are you there 24 hours? Okay, you got.
Thanks, Mr. Cruz. Mr. Harding.
I just have a question about the speed hump. I'm trying to figure it out. The 12th Street, Clay crossing, there's a stop sign at Clay, correct?
Correct.
So where would you put the speed hump if they stop?
I was just referring to different places on Clay that are wide open, longer between stops. It was an idea because of complaints where they said that speeding.
I just thought we were talking about 12th and Clay, so sorry. I didn't realize you meant like speed humps along Clay. I would be opposed to that without further study.
True.
And also because then we're just going to, I'm opposed to that without further study.
Okay. Mr. Sires.
I've been down there several times. I think the police are doing a good job with the crosswalk. I talk with the kids as they come across. Today, I talked to 4 kids. I talked to another group that they're all headed down there. Kids were grateful. They said it's much better. I mean, this is a pair of 6th graders, a pair of look like 4th graders. As long as we can keep that crossing guard there, that's what's the most important right now. And when it slows down, then we could do something different. But when we've already spent an extra $10 million on Main Street, I think we can afford a crossing guard twice a day for an hour. And the kids, it was much safer. I don't think, Chase, you wouldn't want your kids crossing that street. I've sat there a couple times for many hours, several. One day I think I sat there for 4 hours. That was on a Saturday. But when you watch that traffic and how fast it is, I'd like to see a couple of those humps on Clay, but also I think it's very important to have a traffic light, and you've got the flashing light. But the most important thing is that crossing guard, whether it's a police officer or someone else, to be there and keep those kids safe. I don't care if it's just one kid that crosses. He's got to be safe. Anywhere these kids are in town going to school, I want them to be safe 100%. So I did notice this morning when I was down there There were, I believe it was on Franklin, I saw about 4 or 5 kids go there. I rode down on my motorcycle and sat there then on Clay and watched. And it's so important to have safe crossing on that 12th Street. We need to do something. So as long as we can continue to have that, whether it's a police officer or an auxiliary or whatever, to help those kids across, because they could either come down and go across there, it's controlled, and if they cross up further, you know, maybe that's the place where you have your crossing guard and then the kids from there. But we've got to have a crossing guard as fast as that traffic is. That's all.
Mr. Schrage, or Director, what hours do we have that crossing guard now? I know there was some discussion on when the kids were going to St. Pat's, when they were going to Lincoln. Do you know what those times are? Are we hitting the right times?
Yes, we are now. Well, we're just trying to make sure that we're there before St. Pat's and Lincoln Elementary start, and then when they both discharge.
I think it's about 7 to around maybe 8:30, and then
Or
3.
8 to 9 in the morning is our target.
Yep.
So,
And then 3 p.m. to Wednesday afternoon.
3 to 4 would cover getting out for Lincoln and St. Pat's. And Wednesdays they have early outs, the elementaries.
Okay. Mr. Burr.
Did I hear you say, Chase, that at a couple other intersections, they also noted there were pedestrians crossing at about the same volume?
Yeah, they're not taking official counts like they are at Clay, but they can see the pedestrians crossing at those other locations.
And are they having any difficulty, or is the visibility better there, or?
I'm not sure.
Well, I would just say there was 3 mornings I was out there, and the same amount of people crossed at 12th and Franklin, 12th and Tremont, and 12th and Clay. So 4, 5, 6 people at each intersection, the same hours. You can see they're headed to Lincoln. Oftentimes, you know, a parent comes back the other way, just like down at Clay, or down at Clay. And sometimes it's a kid just walking to and from school.
Okay, so even though they saw the officer, they chose not to use the assistance?
Yeah, they're definitely crossing at Franklin and Tremont. And so if we had the route of a crossing guard, that would be the next topic. What's the best place for a crossing guard?
Okay, thanks.
Dustin, did you have your, Kelly?
I may. Anybody else?
Okay. Mr. Cruz?
Director Schrage, on the volume of traffic on this 12th Street, and if I'm using the right, collector arterial, if that's the right word, you have designed specific stops. How do you determine that? By the number of traffic, you let them go 5, 6 blocks, and you put a stop, or how did they end up with Walnut and the College?
Generally, it's based on the 4-way stop analysis, which considers volumes, crashes, and speed limit, I believe. And a lot of that, as you can see,
Well, like North Cedar.
it would have been where the arterials are meeting the collectors is where the volumes are at.
Sure. Okay. Volumes from both ways?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion from council? All right, Mr. Schrage, if you want to have a seat, appreciate that. And this time I'd ask anyone from the audience would like to just name and city?
How's it going? John Rashawn, Cedar Falls. So, obviously there's still an issue. Everyone's speeding. I don't know if we can get some speed limits from the people that have been pulled over at all, or from the sensors. Can we get some speeds that, you know, show what they're driving? Do you have any of that data? Okay. And then some of the sensors they installed going east, they're not being driven over, so those sensors are probably going to be off. You talked about the crosswalk being installed in a different location, I believe, Franklin. That's also an issue. There's signs there already, so that could actually be addressed. So Main Street is obviously closed. We got an issue with 12th and 18th are not the same as 1st and University. We established that last time. I was driving out on Union Road. There is 2 RFBs out there within about 3 blocks. I stopped there, hit the button, no one stopped for me to cross. Dude with the trailer was going probably 50 miles per hour, flew through. Okay? Those don't do anything. The speed humps could be installed on 12th, multiple places. I would like to see the data for Walnut when that stop sign went in and the difference before it was installed. I believe that was when Chase also was working for the city. And Walnut and College, I believe that's 1 block or a couple blocks, right? Stop signs, both on 12th. So there's 3 speed humps out in West 4th Street. I don't see why we can't have them on 12th Street, or let's get some temporary ones installed. It's not that hard. And that's all I got.
Thank you.
Rachel Mershon, Cedar Falls. So, Mr. Birdie, I actually spoke to your officer today when they were crossing. Actually, the officers weren't there multiple times at the right time. I had an email a few times, and I actually called the police to let you guys know groups of 7 and 8 cross right when your officer had left. So they're starting to get the right time now, so thank goodness for that. And I would like to say the officer today said he has a tough time. He's done it twice now. And he has had a tough time with the cars being so aggressive on 12th. And he goes out and he puts his hands up. He said, you know, I'm interested to see what happens at the meeting tonight. And are they thinking of getting a 4-way stop? Because that makes the most sense, because people are flying. And I think the most important thing to know today is, what are the speeds on 12th? Obviously, there's been 96 tickets, and I can just tell you that they are going very fast, and the speed limit, that's why I originally, Mr. Mayor Rob Green got mad because I asked, do you guys know what the speed limit is? Because it's 25 miles per hour. And I will say with the crossing guard, I did have, you guys, this is obviously an issue because people delivered us flowers. We got kind of famous after this meeting. People were coming up out of their car, jumping out and saying, hey, thank you guys for raising this issue. I had one woman tell me, I was almost hit here while walking her dog, and I said, now you can cross. Well, shouldn't have told her that because it's a yield right there, and cars are supposed to yield. Car came right up to her to a screeching halt. So we're still having major issues there because some people come to complete stops on the yield, and then the other cars behind them honk really loud. But I had a little girl, so we had flowers delivered. We had a woman stop, give us a signed copy of her book. And I had one little girl who actually made fun of me one time when I helped her. I said, have a good day, sweetheart. She was with another girl, and it kind of hurt my feelings, to be honest, because she was like, have a good day, sweetheart, further down the road. And I'm like, well, she came up to me, their hands right here, and I was standing out there, and she said, I just wanted to say thank you because I feel much safer. And she gave me a hug, and I started bawling. So I know that these measures have helped, but those cars are still speeding, and we've sent emails. Benton's almost hit a group of 5 high school runners. So the speed is on 12th Street out of control. That police officer today, he said, so they're going to hopefully get a 4-way stop. I mean, it just seems logical. So let's look at the data of Walnut when that 4-way stop got put in on the amount of accidents, if they went down, and if the speeding through there is improved, because I know it is. I know when you come up to a stop, you know, you're preparing your car, okay, let's come to a stop. And I think speed humps do need to be put in all through 12th. Clay Street, they are going pretty fast lately. Yeah, that's the truth. But on 12th Street, it is dangerous, and there is not as many kids crossing on Franklin or Tremont. They do mostly come down, but there are kids. So down the whole 12th, let's get them slowed down and let's keep the kids safe. And, you know, otherwise it's just definitely need to put a four-way stop and to get people to slow down there. So hopefully you guys consider that and keep that be your focus and not just like move on and they should be able to have a stopper. The kids press a button right there too. And maybe those kids on Tremont and Franklin then will come there and feel a little bit safer because it's only one block rather than going all the way down to Main and then all the way back up like the last city people told us. So on that 25-mile minor arterial, let's get the people slowed down and let's keep the kids safe. Four-way stop, speed humps.
Thanks, Rich.
Okay, Terry Viator, Cedar Falls, 12th and Clay. So when we're calling this a minor arterial road to get the traffic through, we have to consider this is a hill. Now, I don't know what the legal requirements when funding whatever from Highway 58 to call this a minor arterial in a heavily populated area. But I think that hill is too big of an incline. I mean, concrete is completely broken up, was never thick enough for all of the semis, day in, day out. Today, Nor coming down, I literally say, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be on this street, right? No trucks over 10 tons. There's no deliveries in between Hudson and Main. But that incline is not the same as at the top of the hill because it's flat from the stop sign on College and then the stop sign on Walnut, and then there's a hill. And I can guarantee you that hill, according to federal guidelines, pretty sure it's probably more than what is allowed for your minor arterial definition, minor arterial, right? Right? This, you know, all I'm hearing from Mr. Shoggy is the emphasis is to get the traffic through. We live there. It's our home. And the traffic, do you know how many times in 2 days that the sign in the middle, the yield sign has been hit and knocked, I don't know, 10 feet away? We have a video of one gal getting out of her car in the middle of 12th Street, running out and picking it up, and all the people behind her were really angry. Okay? The speeding is so out of control on that road. 96 tickets, I don't know what the average speed limit is, but clearly it's over 25. I don't know how many miles over, how much revenue the city's getting, but that incline on that hill should not be compared flippantly to the rest of 12th Street, right? It's a big hill. And these people are going up the hill really fast and down the hill really fast. They don't care about the children. Okay, the police officer today, he struggled with some of the cars who didn't even stop, weren't even going to stop for him. They're not stopping a lot of them for the children. I had to run out with 2 little boys double riding on their little moped, which in my day, that wasn't allowed. And they like the kids, they're like weaving in and out of the kids. And these are students going up to CF. I think they need to bring driver's ed back into the school system because these kids are texting and they're speeding and they're in big SUVs. So there really needs to be a 4-way stop, and we really need to see what the incline on that hill is. There has to be some legal guideline for how much of a hill it can be, right? I mean, if we're going to call this a minor arterial road, to get the traffic through, then let's follow all the rules. And those kids need a 4-way stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, back to, I'm sorry.
Sorry, one quick thing. Kate Williams, Cedar Falls. I wanted to speak on this issue because I think I can bring a unique perspective as someone who is joining the community from out of state. was raised in Iowa, got my master's at UNI, and then moved out east for about 8 years. So coming back, I was looking for, you know, mature trees, being able to walk down to Main Street, which has been like so revitalized since I was at school here. Being near the parks, all these great things. So just moved in, bought a house on Clay Street, and in August, I'm walking with my baby in the stroller, toddler by the hand, trying to go to that park on Clay Street, and we're just waiting a ridiculous amount of time to cross, like in Rhode Island, very thickly settled area where you can you do have to creep out to show you're serious about crossing for a car to kind of stop. So, you know, I gave that a go, people just blowing by. I felt like I had been waiting like 5 minutes. It was insane. So finally no one was coming from the 58 direction and someone was coming up the hill. So I like had to wave both arms like a crazy person and point at that person and be like, you stop, like in their car. She did, and I was able to cross. Like, why does anyone have to do that with their 2 kids? Like, I was like, welcome to the neighborhood. Like, what happened to Iowa Nice since I was here? I find that to be unacceptable. I think that definitely the incline of that hill makes it more of an issue. Like the 12th Street traffic needs the speed hump rather than Clay because the stop sign's already there. If we're coming down the hill on Clay Street, we're already anticipating to stop and slowing down, but 12th Street people are just not slowing down, and it's really unsafe, and I was just so bummed, like excited to come back and be here, and then honestly just the driving culture is really not welcoming and not a good place to live. So please keep that in mind. One other thing I wanted to say was that this is really like the talk of the town. When I go to a park and I'm talking with other parents, this is the thing that people are commenting on. So you may be seeing like the same people coming here while people are busy. You know, I had quite a day, but I'm here because this is important to me, but it's not like just the people who live at that intersection are invested. I'm telling you, the whole area is very invested. It's a nice, you know, I love the historic details of my house and all those great things that made me choose this neighborhood, and it is not a place to just be sped through. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Okay, I don't want to turn my head again and miss somebody. Is there someone else? Okay, I'll take it back over to council. Any discussion? Anyone have anything? Okay.
Councilman Schultz?
Mr. Sires?
I'd like to see some permanent lights installed there. I think that's the only way to kind of solve this. That way you could turn them on flashing late at night, and then but the kids would have a good, safe place to cross. When I don't know if you remember, Gil, when we went to Lincoln School, Franklin had the playground was on the other side, and we had a great big set of lights there, and we just pushed the button, then we could cross the street. So
yeah.
Something like that's got to be done.
Mr. Cruz.
I'd be more in favor of speed humps, humps I guess is the more, less damaging apparently from previous discussion. Because of the time of day, you could turn the lights to flashing like they do on Hudson Road, but a speed hump is there all the time, and it'll slow down all the time. We have our public safety on duty 24 hours a day, but the speed hump is getting every single car, where public safety is not going to be there. So that's just my input. I like the speed hump, because we got it in town already on 4th Street, or whatever it goes beyond that.
Susan, did you?
Well, this was considered to be an update, and I thank you for the update. I assume that you'll continue with the watching it and doing the crosswalks. This has only been 2 weeks. Is that correct?
Yep, and then we'll provide you some information at a later date when we have it all collected. Yep.
Yep. This was just meant to be an update. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, one last thing then I have. There was one comment, the sensor going to the east. Can you explain how the sensors work and what that, are you concerned about that?
Once we start to look at the data, if we see some discrepancies, we can always put them in alternative locations. Depends on, we have two different styles of, there's cords that lay across the roadway. What we actually have are, they're a cone-shaped sensor that face upward, and they're measuring vehicle lengths as they cross over top.
Okay, so you do have to drive over the top of it for it to sense?
Or in that cone that it's shooting.
Okay.
And kind of upward.
Okay. Yeah, this is near and dear to me. Obviously, I'm 2 blocks from there. I live on 12th Street, so I've watched all this unfurl too. So it's going to be interesting how we get the speed report and the traffic study. Dustin or Simon, did I see a hand go up over here? Or? No.
I guess I was just gonna say I don't live in the area, and I do drive down there sometimes, but you know, I want to do something. I just don't know what the answer is at this moment. You know, so I'm open to ideas, and I think we need to continue talking about it, but. Yeah, I'm hesitant to say like, yep, just plop speed humps down right now, or just, you know, do that without really doing a little more diligence. But at the same time, I don't know that's the right answer either. So it's a tough one. But I'm willing to see what we come forward with and look at the ideas for sure. So,
Councilman Schultz?
Yes, sir.
I've been down to Public Works. We do have a few temporary ones. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, Chase.
Yep.
Did you guys lay those out to see if they were going to make the distance?
We have an older section and it's only 10 feet wide, so we don't have a complete set.
There's a pretty big stack of them right beside.
Yep, they laid it out. It's only 10 feet.
Did they?
Yep.
10 feet wide and only cover one lane?
Pretty much, yep.
And when I looked those up, they're about $1,500.
15 to 3,000, 3,500, yep. Depends on the
so we
style
could get some of those.
Yeah. I can go back, and I know I didn't mention this, but speed bumps are intended not to be
these are actually speed humps.
They're intended to be in a series, strategically placed, so vehicles cannot speed up in between. So there has to, just for a reminder, there'd have to be a really broad analysis to say these are the locations that they go.
So it'd be easier to just put in a stoplight?
If it's warranted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, we will, did you have a comment? Okay. Director Birdie.
I just want to make a quick correction. It was said that we issued 96 citations. It was we did 96 traffic stops. Is this working? Okay. Yeah, we did 96 traffic stops. We did not issue 96 citations. That was said a couple times. And then I would just look for some guidance on where do we want the crossing guard and the location, what intersection going forward from council? Or do we want to maintain the same thing we're doing?
Mr. Chair, can I actually make a comment on that? And I know it's just my own experience, but that's what I base my stuff off a lot. When I was little, I lived across a major highway to get to elementary school. There was a crossing guard there to help all of us from that neighborhood cross and get safely to school. At some point, I don't know why, but if it was maybe, I thought it was an inconvenience. I'm sure I had to walk a little bit out of the way, maybe a block or two. But I remember defiantly not crossing where that crossing guard was, even as a second grader. I don't know that you're going to stop. If there's somebody there to help children cross, if they're wanting that help, they will walk to them. Otherwise, there are going to be the instances where they just don't utilize it. And I mean, that's my only comment on that. I mean, you can have it anywhere in that stretch, but you're probably still going to have some kids that maybe choose not to use it.
Thanks, Kelly. Susan?
Yeah, in answer to your question, I would leave that up to the officer's discretion. You're the ones out there that are seeing where the need is, so I would like you to put the crossing guard where you see the need is.
Okay. And then just one thing I would add to that, we've been using for crossing guards on-duty police officers. So we prioritize our calls like we do everything in the police and fire business. So if a call comes out that's of a major priority, they are going to abandon that intersection and respond to the call like you would want them to. We can try and hire another crossing guard like we do at the elementary schools. but it's just tough in this market to hire anybody. We don't even have any spares anymore. We often have even our regular crossing guards don't show up, and then we have to fill in for them. So this is one of many crossing guards that we help to fill. So there will be days that somebody's not there, and that instead of resulting in a flurry of emails, I just want to let you guys know that that just will happen depending on call volume. So.
And I don't think we expect you to be there. We expect the calls to be prioritized.
Yes.
So just to follow up on that, if there were to be volunteers or people that are interested in being a crossing guard, how do they go about contacting you?
Well, they could contact public safety to help out, but we'd also want to make sure, that really gets in the legal realm. A crossing guard has to know what they're doing, and the city, I would assume, has some significant liability if they don't do a good job at it. So we would definitely prefer that it's people that we're paying, that we've hired.
Councilman Schultz.
I don't know who said that.
Right here.
Oh, okay. Mr. Sires.
We got a volunteer.
There you go. I've been there several times. I think it is a priority for those kids to cross that street safely. To pull off that job is not good. We do need to have somebody who is going to be there, and it's important. It's important for every child in this town to be safe when they go to school. So I would leave it right there on Clay Street because that's where we started it at, and that actually goes between St. Pat's and Lincoln, pretty close. So I'd keep it there instead of moving it around so the kids can count on that to be the spot. That's all.
Well,
Somebody was.
Simon.
I was just going to say, we might as well leave it. I mean, obviously, if you guys notice a trend that there are way more people crossing at another area, let us know and we could reassess. But the consistency of the crossing guard being at Clay and 12th, kids will know. Like Kelly said, if they want that help, they're going to go to it. I know that's how I was when I was the kid that went to the crossing guard, though,
Okay.
Sorry.
Well,
Yeah. So I have neighborhood children that are coming from the south of 12th Street, and they're coming on my corner at Tremont, and they're just filtering over to Franklin to go to either Lincoln or to St. Pat's. One last time for Darrell.
I guess I was just going to ask, and you kind of elaborated about a volunteer crossing guard, because many communities, it appears that the people are, I don't know if you'd say random citizens or maybe somebody that lives in that corner. I'm sure they have training. And then a liability contract with the city, Mr. Rogers, I'm assuming, some sort of, we have, I don't know, do we have instances where citizens trained to do other things in the city that are not a full-fledged PSO? Don't traffic control, that's,
Well, they're not there on behalf of the city, though. They may work for the university or things like that, but
Okay.
for the city, all I can think of is that we have paid crossing guards. So.
Okay. Yeah, I guess if they don't want to walk to a crossing guard, they may not want to walk to a stoplight. So it's going to be kind of like Kelly's point. The rebel says the quickest, straightest way is right there. And they'll go there.
Last question. Sorry. When they said we're going to get updates, do we know the next update by chance, or how long we're going to collect more data? Is it going to be next meeting?
I would say within the next couple of weeks, we'd be able to provide you with.
So next council meeting, or next?
I think we're going to assemble it all in kind of a email package and send it out unless directed otherwise. So.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to know when to look for it.
Okay, so what we're taking away is, right now, we're still investigating a speed hump and cost and what we have, and also we will have from 8 a.m. till 9 a.m. Committed, and 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. for crossing, and potentially look at other personnel for filling in if the police are called away. And look forward to the next update from Chase. Good?
Yep.
Okay, with that, I will call this to adjournment, and it is 7:33. Let's do a 7:40 enough break to get us back for regular council.